Today's lesson is learning how to analyze a story problem to identify the independent and dependent variables. We then use this information to construct a table, find the relationship, create an equation, and then use all of that data to create a visual aid in a graph, specifically a plot graph or line graph. So first, let's read the problem. Caleb started saving money in a cookie jar. He started with $25, which is a key piece of information, so let's highlight that. He adds $10 to the account each week. Write an equation where W is the number of weeks and T is the total amount in the account. Determine which variable is independent and which is dependent. Then graph the total amount in the account for W being less than 6 weeks. So we have a lot of things to take a look at. The very first thing that we need to do is identify which one is the independent versus the dependent. The way I do this is by taking a look at my two pieces of information. It is listed right here under where W is the number of weeks and T is the total amount in the account. And so I look and ask myself, which one of those is dependent on the other? And so, since the amount of money that I've saved, or Caleb has saved, depends on the number of weeks I've saved, I know that weeks is my independent, because it doesn't count on anything. And so I'm going to write that information in my table. Usually the independent goes on the left side, and the dependent goes on the right. And so we have weeks and total. Now I have to start saving. So in the first week, I have saved $25 at the beginning and then added $10 to the account for after week 1. So 25 plus 10 was $35. After week 2, I had that same amount of money, but then I added $10 more, which gave me $45. After week 3, I have the $25. I've saved now for 3 weeks, so 3 times the $10 per week gives me 30. 30 plus 25 is 55. And from here, I've identified that we've developed a pattern every single time. It looks like I'm adding 10. So I'm going to continue this pattern. That's a terrible 7. There we go. We got 85 in weeks 4, 5, and 6. So now after I look at this, looking at the problem, did I answer everything so far? I've written in the equation. I haven't done that yet, but I have identified the independent and the dependent, and I've used the table to fill out my data. So how do I write my equation? Well, the first thing is, I'm going to lift this up. Read the problem. I started with $25. That does not change. So I have my $25 at the beginning. He adds $10 to the account each week. That does change depending on the number of weeks. And so I add my $10 per week, and we'll let W represent weeks. And all that together equals the total amount in the account. And as we can see, the total amount depends on first knowing how many weeks he started saving. So now I have all this information. I can create a graph so I can get a better visual aid. Now to conserve space, I'm going to get rid of our pattern, which is again adding my 10. And because we're not taking a look at number 2, I'm just going to cover this information because we may just need to write over it. Alright, so remember that we have our x-axis and we have our y. Our x is usually our independent, or is our independent, and our dependent is the y, which means our total amount, as we will not forget to label or give a title to our graph. We have our total, and we have the number of weeks. We're going to let our scale for our x-axis be 1, and so I can count by ones. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And let's let the scale for our y-axis be, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I need a max of 85 on my y. We can go ahead and say, will 15 work? 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90. So it looks like if we have our scale be 15, I think it will work out just fine. And we have 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, and 90 is our maximum. Alright, we're going to use red to plot our points. So in week 1, remember we plot our x coordinate first, and yes, our table is nothing but a coordinate point. Together we have our x, which is our 1, and our y, which is our 35, and so I go over one spot and up to 35. Now keep in mind that our scale is 15, so to get 35, I'm going to have to take a third of that 15 to go up 5. So that I'm going to place that right about, make sure it's on the line, right about there. And then I just continue plotting my points. We have 2, 45. We have 3, 55, which is just under 60. We have 4, 65, just above. 5, 75, smack dab on the point. And 6, 85, which is just under 90. And as you can see, this is a linear function, or an equation that creates a straight line. And if I draw a line through it, it should be straight. Don't forget your arrow, because yes, it would continue if I worked or started saving longer than 6 weeks. A nice extension is to ask yourself, how much money would you have in your account at the beginning of the bank account's life? So when you first open it up, where would your point go? A lot of people would start thinking that it was 0 because you haven't saved anything. But then others would have to remember that you started with that $25, and you would plot your point at the 0 and at the 25 right there, which again is in line with the rest of our points. So to summarize, we analyzed the problem, we identified the independent and dependent variables. We used those independent and dependent variables to create a table and listed out the amount of total money saved for the first 6 weeks. We formulated an equation based off of our table and the information appointed in the graph or in the story problem, and then from that we plotted our x and y coordinates in our graph. If you have any questions, please email me at jroberts@pleasanthill.k12.or.us, and have a fantastic day.